Welcome to the Love of the Star podcast. I'm Bobby Belt, Dallas Cowboys insider for 105 through the fan in Dallas. Looking a little on the video here. Lighting's not great, Brian. I look a little like I'm snitching on Nixon or something here.
You do look like you're a little bit in the witness protection program, if I had to say, but everybody recognizes that voice of Bobby Belt.
Exactly. I am Bobby Belt, Dallas Cowboys insider for 105 through the fan Dallas. Brian and I are in the same spot today. That is Brian Broaddus, former Super Bowl winning NFL scout. He is now the co-host of the G-Bag Nation, 2 to 7 p.m. Central, Monday through Friday on 105 through the fan. That's your radio flagship home of the Dallas Cowboys. And speaking of the radio flagship of the Cowboys, Brian Broaddus is the pre- and post-game co-host on the Dallas Cowboys Radio Network, and also the co-host of the Draft Show on DallasCowboys.com. Brian, how you doing?
Doing well. And again, that's Bobby Belt, who is on 5:30 to 10 every Monday through Friday.
I'm on 6. They're on at 5:30. Well, we'll start. So don't tune in until 6.
Yeah, we start the show here at 5:30. Bobby rolls in at 6, does a great job. But that is the Sean and RJ with Bobby show every Monday through Friday. And then also the Cowboys Insider, or 105.3, the Fans Insider for all things Dallas Cowboys. Host of here, again, the Love of the Star podcast, doing super. We thank everybody out there for listening to the show. And then also, Bobby, contributor to the Draft Show. We're inside of 30 days on the NFL Draft, so you're going to hear all our voices for those 3 days. So, yeah, Robert, it's good to have you in the same locale.
I know. We've actually got us both hooked up with the headsets today.
Amazing. And probably sound 1,000% better.
I would guess so.
On my end of it here.
I would guess so.
Got to improve a lot on that.
You guys let us know just how wonderful it sounds and how awful my lighting is. Please just comment on just how poor you think my lighting is. All right, Brian, there have been a couple moves in the last couple days for the Cowboys.
Yeah.
One, firming up the Cowboys' future at running back, adding to the running back room, and an interesting move along the offensive line that I'm wondering what it might indicate. Let's start with the running back room. On Thursday, Tony Pollard signed his franchise tender, so he is officially locked in with the Cowboys. They have until July 17th to work out a long-term deal if they so choose. If they don't, Tony Pollard is going to make $10.091 million next year on a one-year contract in 2023. I guess I'm a little surprised he went ahead and signed it this early. Because there's obviously then no leverage for a long-term deal. I brought this up on Sean and RJ this week, and I have not heard anything like this, so please don't take this as, oh, Bobby wouldn't say this unless he had heard whispers. I have not. This is just something I'm throwing out there.
Folks, don't let Bobby fool you. He heard something
I promise I didn't. When you hear what I'm about to say, you'll understand I did not hear this.
Okay.
I wonder, did Tony Pollard get any sort of cold feet at the idea if he sees the running back market and guys signed for 6 and went, what if they rescinded this tag?
Absolutely he did. Absolutely he did. I mean, you start to see what's happening in the market, and we all figured this out, I think, very quickly. The more, Bobby, that we dug into the draft, the more that we realized that this draft is going to stretch from rounds 1 to rounds 5. And I'm not just talking about one player per round. I'm talking about this thing's got 2, 3 potential quality players. And, if you're Tony Pollard, you're looking at the situation and you're thinking like, boy, you know what? My health isn't really, it's in question right now. The Cowboys look at the board, in another week, these pro days are going to stop. And then the Cowboys are going to turn their attention to going in there and putting boards together. And, they're going to, they've already got an idea of the grades that they've given these guys. But as a collective group, they're going to go talk about them and they're going to stack them. And once they stack those names, it's going to be very clear to them that, wow, this could be, I honestly, I think this Tony Pollard situation is going to be very similar to what we saw with Dalton Schultz.
Yeah. Yeah, I absolutely
and
could see that.
And especially if, in fact, that Ronald Jones or anybody that they draft shows up this year and is able to have production for not $10 million. That's and Tony Pollard's a hell of a player. But Tony Pollard, there's questions. I mean, we Dallas Cowboy fans, they've been through this. They've seen or heard us talking about, well, Dak Prescott coming back from this. And okay, well, then here's Michael Gallup coming back from this, and here's now Tony Pollard. There's so much unknown right now about that. Those guys, like say, the players work hard. Britt Brown works hard with them to get them back rehab, but you don't know.
Yeah.
You don't know how effective that they're really, really going to be. And we could talk about how effective they're going to be. So I totally get why Tony Pollard did what he did. That money's guaranteed. So if Tony Pollard is not able to answer the bell, he still gets $10 million from the Cowboys. There's no pulling back from that. The fact that he signed that tag, the Cowboys are now on the hook. So he also looking at seeing what's going on. I know on our shows, and I'm sure on your show in the morning, we talk about, I mean, my advice to Ezekiel Elliott was, don't wait, man. If you've got a deal, get in there before somebody says, well, we don't need to give Ezekiel Elliott $3.5 million or $5 million. We don't need to give him that. We can give him veteran minimum if he wants to play, because we don't have to, So I think this running back, it's only gotten worse for running backs. It really, really has.
I believe this would be the first time in 12 years, if it stands now, as the market stands now, and there's not a running back out there who looks like he would break this. This will be the first time in 12 years that an outside free agent hasn't been given at least 3% of the cap as their average annual value in a deal. And there were some good running backs out there on the market this offseason, like Miles Sanders and David Montgomery, and and so it's interesting to see the way teams have shifted on the running back market. Ronald Jones ends up here in Dallas on a 1-year deal for, I believe, it's $1.5 million. Only 17 carries in Kansas City last year, but I think you've seen an effective player, and people have already jumped down my throat. Have you watched Ronald Jones yet, Brian?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to see if you're going to jump down my throat the same way a few others have this week at 105 through the fan. I think when you watch the tape, not the workload, everything else, I think when you watch the tape, Ronald Jones is a better player right now than Ezekiel Elliott. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I think when you start to talk about, the ability to attack the hole, to get through the hole, to make the cuts, both, I think both offer you power in the way that they run, but Jones is a little bit quicker, looks a little bit fresher in the way. I mean, Zeke's been dealing with a lot.
Yeah.
He dealt with a lot. I mean, the wear and tear that he's had over the years.
His knees have gotten beat up.
Yeah, he's gotten, the hits that he's taken, it slowed him down. And, he doesn't have that explosiveness that he once had. He has the explosiveness with some power, with contact and stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, through the hole, he's not the same player.
Do you think, what do you think Ronald Jones can give them, not just with the physicality, also catching the ball out of the backfield? That's been something that throughout his career he showed a lot in Tampa Bay. Didn't get as much of an opportunity last year in Kansas City, but I think you've seen from Ronald Jones a guy who
has a history of it.
Yeah, who and
USC
can catch the ball, can is a powerful runner, but has shown some wiggle at times, I think, and is an intriguing player. But I just think that Ronald Jones is a nice complete back to add to the system as a good 1-2 punch, depending on what you get in the draft. If you strike out in the draft, I think you feel okay about Ronald Jones and Tony Pollard as your running back.
Yeah, I think you would. I don't think they are going to strike out, though. Like I said, I think rounds 1 through 5, you're going to find somebody that can suit your eye and is able to do the things. But you mentioned the big unknown about the running back situation now with the Cowboys is, how is Mike McCarthy and Brian Schottenheimer going to use the running backs? That's the big. I mean, we had an idea with Kellen Moore. It was really more primarily just hand them the ball. Is Mike McCarthy going to figure out a screen game? Is he going to figure out how to flex a running back in a slot or all the way to the outside? And that's, I think that you say that about the offense in general. There's so many questions. I have absolutely zero questions about the defense. All my questions for the Dallas Cowboys pertain to the offense. I do have my concerns about not only, how they're going to use the running backs. I have big concerns about the offensive line coach and the switch we've seen the Cowboys, what happens to a group when they switch the offensive line coach.
Yeah.
Paul Alexander, great example. Paul Alexander fired mid-season. I worry about
and then on the other end of that, how the switch helped them when they went to Colombo.
when they went to Mark Colombo. It actually brought them back to focus. So I worry about a guy like Mike Solari. Mike Solari, and I know this doesn't. It's talking about Ronald Jones, and
no, but it's all part.
But
it's all part of it.
My questions about the running backs or about the running game is not so much about the players itself, but how they're going to try and run the ball. And I worry about. We saw, and trust me, I was one of the most critical guys on Joe Philbin.
Yeah.
But give Joe Philbin credit. Steele, Tyler Smith, Biotish. I mean, these guys did get better.
I think Biotish and Steele, you can give him some credit. I don't know about. I still am not certain he ever came around on Tyler.
Well,
Smith.
he probably didn't like, but he's the line coach.
Sure.
So he's Tyler Smith played a couple different spots and wasn't. Tyler Smith didn't pee down his leg last year.
No.
When they put him in, they got him ready to play. Whether that's Blatsko or whoever that's coaching now the running backs, which in another weird dynamic thing going on there.
They love his juice though. They love the edge he brings.
Well, okay, that's good, but those running backs are a different group.
Yeah.
Running backs have egos. Offensive linemen don't. So if you've been dealing with, it's a little bit different. They could sell it as, we want to run the ball more and it helps. Hey, I was on a staff in Green Bay where Andy Reid went from tackles tight end coach to coaching the quarterbacks. He coached Brett Favre when Steve Mariucci went on and Marty Morningweg went on. Andy Reid became it. And sometimes you do. Sometimes Andy Reid was able to put blocking schemes with the perimeter game. And once he learned both, that's why Andy Reid, I think, is one of the better play callers in the league. He understands protection to also marry it with, routes down the field. And, so that's got to be the Cowboys' hope that Blatsko could be that guy. But my bigger question is with the offensive line and some questions at the left guard spot and the new offensive line coach, who sat out the whole year last year.
Yeah.
That you got to prove to me
was unceremoniously let go in Seattle.
You got to prove to me this is the right move. I applaud the fact that I think Mike McCarthy had enough of Kellen Moore after the Green Bay game. I think that's the time. If you want to, and I'm sure I'll get some text message from somebody over there.
And I think on Kellen Moore's side, he had enough of blending concepts and just wanted to run what he wanted to run.
Exactly.
And I think the Cowboys probably felt a lot like we got to pick here.
Yeah.
The one thing we can't do next year is run this back with Kellen and Mike and a blended concept. It's either got to be Kellen's offense or Mike's offense, and I
think Mike really also looks at he's won 25 games in 2 years, and his job's still in jeopardy. You have that feeling that, you don't see anybody rush into Mike McCarthy's defense here and say, wow, we've got to get Mike McCarthy signed up and all that. I mean, there seems to be a lot of this. Well, if I'm gonna go out, I'm going out on my terms. I'm gonna go out calling the plays, and there's a side of me that really, and this is like you would just said. I ain't talking to anybody over there about this, but this is just my 2 cents. I think Brian Schottenheimer's going to end up calling the plays here.
By the end of this year or into the future?
I think the talk about McCarthy calling the plays.
Yeah.
I think we're going to see Brian. It's a Brian Schottenheimer play.
Hold on to that one for bold predictions in the summer. We do bold.
Yeah.
We got to remember to circle back on that one. You are listening to the Love of the Star podcast. The Love of the Star is an Audacy podcast. You can find it on the Audacy app or wherever you get your podcasts. All right, Brian, another signing that was made this week also probably impacts the run game, also impacts a lot of the discussion around the offensive line, some of which we've already done here with Mike Solari, and that is Chuma Edoga is brought in here, played last year with Atlanta, former third-round pick out of USC, a guy we had thought could have potentially been, there were some discussions of a potential trade last year at the deadline. It's funny, the Cowboys have acquired the 2 guys that they were tied to at the deadline last year in Chuma Edoga and Brandon Cooks. But Edoga, a guy who's played a lot of tackle in his career, apparently is here as a guard. Is what they'd be looking at with him here, but offers some flexibility. Have you got a chance to see Edoga or talk to anybody around the league yet?
No, I really haven't. I haven't. You know, it's funny. I need to get with the gang of 7 on this one because they're the ones that usually watch a lot of this tape.
You did have some thoughts back at the deadline, though, right? Nothing updated, but back at the deadline, I remember you'd said through some of your conversations that it sounded a little lukewarm on Edoga.
Yeah, I remember like I say, the guys and gals that I talk to are the ones that watch a lot of this tape.
Uh-huh.
And I'm trying to remember exactly what was said about that. So I want to circle back around and, maybe on our next show, I'll have a little bit of a better update and a little bit better understanding. But these moves, and Bobby, we talk about this a bunch. Will McClay, I think, does a really good job of protecting his roster.
Yes.
I really do. And the reason why you go out and you get Edoga and a guy like that is when you play preseason games. Now, maybe he could develop as that swing player. Maybe he can develop into the guy that can play a couple of different spots. But what you do is with a veteran guy who's made starts and you have him in camp, and then all of a sudden you get into preseason games, Edoga turns into the guy that's playing into the third quarter and then playing into the fourth. And so when you're trying to evaluate Will Greer more at quarterback, or maybe you draft a quarterback.
Yeah.
And now you're trying to evaluate that guy, or you're trying to evaluate wide receivers that you might draft or have signed. You want veteran players on your offensive line because what happens is, you get a bunch of young guys, you get 5 really young guys out there that kind of are struggling, to kind of understand what they're doing or doing their jobs. Sacks, you're not creating any running lanes. You're just not. So having veteran players that could play in preseason games helps you in your evaluation. Edoga initially, I think, is going to be that guy. And let's see if he plays well enough to where he takes a Matt Farniok's job or something like that, where he's playing in a couple of different spots.
This is I want to get your thoughts specifically on this, and I know we've discussed it a little bit, but this might be the spot to flesh it out a little bit more. This is very interesting from Nick Eatman from his story at DallasCowboys.com about the signing of Edoga, which a guy who's played left and right tackle at USC and in the NFL, but has mainly been a tackle in his career. This is the story from Nick. Says depth on the offensive line is always a luxury. The Cowboys seemingly added to that on Wednesday, acquiring veteran Chuma Edoga to the mix. Great. Edoga could even be a candidate to compete for the starting spot at left guard to replace Connor McGovern. That would indicate that there is a starting spot available at left guard, which if Tyron Smith is starting at left tackle, you're not just having second-year Tyler Smith compete with somebody at left guard. That would be his spot. So is the fact that line even gets written, that there's a starting spot open at left guard, does that indicate Tyler Smith is starting at left tackle next year, Terrence Steele is starting at right tackle, Tyron Smith is not in the starting line?
I think they got Tyron Smith's contract to the point where he is your new version of Jason Peters.
With the escalators for playing time.
Yeah. If something happens at guard,
because you could read it one of two ways. You could read it as those escalators are in there to protect the Cowboys if he gets hurt again,
right?
Or like you're saying, they could be in there to fairly compensate Tyron if he has to start.
Right. So yeah, I think that, to me, I just don't see a good reason to not play Tyler Smith anywhere other than left tackle. I just don't.
He looks like he has special traits there.
I just don't. And I mean, nothing against Tyron Smith, Hall of Fame tackle.
Yeah.
Him playing right tackle wasn't as good as Steele playing right tackle.
No.
Last
Steele,
year.
by the way, shout out to Duke Manyweather.
Duke has done a great job.
Duke had a video out yesterday.
Check out the clips.
He is already
Duke's got him working.
Post ACL, he's out there. He's sliding. He looks smooth.
Yeah.
That was very encouraging. So Terrence Steele already back working.
There's a guy that I absolutely buried. And I can't say it any clearer than that. I buried that kid. And I'm usually pretty good with these offensive linemen. I buried him.
You and your play strength issues with tackles.
Play strength issues. It happens. David Bakhtiari, Steele. Nate Soldar, any one of those guys that doesn't have power. Colton Miller I think there's some debate about him.
Colton Miller needed a lot of technique cleanup was his issue, which he's gotten better. A lot of false steps in his college tape. He fixed it.
He did.
Credit to him.
But Duke's doing a great job with, anybody that Duke works with, they're going to be well-versed on how to play. But I just kind of feel like that they're setting this thing up to where Tyron Smith is going to be your swing tackle guy.
Yeah.
And it's going to be funny to see him, we'll see how quickly Steele gets back again. Britt Brown, Steele, those guys work really, really hard. They'll be back before you know it.
That's one of the things we hear about Steele pretty consistently is that he is
first in, last out.
The work ethic is off the charts with him.
See, that's where, with a guy like with Joe Philbin, that's kind of his guy. And and there's whispers, and this is unfair, but there's been whispers that, Mike Solari not interested in really playing young guys. He likes veteran players. There's coaches that are like that, but this thing is not, if you want to tell me one area that has really the most question marks about it, I'm going to say it's the offensive line, specifically the coaching aspect of it.
Oh, that's unsettling. I don't know that anybody wants to hear that.
That's just what
it's interesting though, because I remember Todd Archer came with you guys. Todd Archer from ESPN, who is incredibly plugged in and has a really good understanding of the thought process with the team, had said to you guys when they still filled the offensive line spot. You got to remember, Jeff Blasco was still in the room at this point.
Yeah.
Joe Philbin had not been moved on from yet, and Todd Archer said there's some people in the building who believe Lunda Wells, the tight ends coach, might be the best offensive line coach in the building. And they kept him at tight ends. I think Lunda Wells did a tremendous job with the tight ends last couple of years. But that tells you a little bit like, okay, well then is everybody in their right spot? The fact that you had two other offensive line coaches in here, and then you go out and hire somebody, Mike Solari, who was on the beach and has feels a little bit like the old boys network type of hire.
Well, and also McCarthy, and he's won 25 games, and 2 years ago,
that is a Schottenheimer connection as well.
Yeah, 2 years ago, pandemic football. Just won a good football team.
Yeah,
won a good football team during pandemic time, and that's when you had guys like, you had Mike Nolan, and you had the linebacker coach that got demoted because George Edwards. Now you got the linebacker coach back.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. It's one of those things where it's like, okay, 125 games, I'm going to get the guys back in here I want to work with,
Yes.
Listen, he had no reason. He had no reason to fire Doug Nussmeier. He had no
I think
he had no reason.
Dak is going to be the politician on all this. If Kellen, there's been a lot of changes. If you asked me what's the one coaching move that probably
pissed Dak off the most,
it'd be the Nussmeier.
It'd be the Nussmeier move.
That's a coach he had a ton of respect, and still has a ton of respect.
Scott Tolzien, fine. I think
he likes Scott Tolzien.
Yeah, I'm about to say Scott Tolzien. He might turn into the next great one. Who knows?
Not an indictment of Tolzien.
Not at all.
Just speaks to the appreciation Dak has for Doug Nussmeier.
That's what I'm saying. If you sat down and got on you went on a fishing boat with Dak, and you're throwing your line in the water, and you're saying, hey, what's the one move that would bother you? Again, I think you're right. I think he would have said, I don't know why they got rid of Doug Nussmeier. I don't know why.
That's absolutely the case. Now, when we talk about the offensive line here, if we're talking about left guard is open, the rest of the offensive line in theory would be set then. You've got Tyler Smith and Terrence Steele at the tackles, obviously Zach Martin, Tyler Biotish there at center. If left guard is open and Edoga's brought in here for competition, does that then scream to us the biggest need on this football team? Because we were assuming Tyler Smith might be sliding inside of left guard. So does that scream to us the biggest need on this football team heading into the draft might be left guard? That might be where they are really needing to pick somebody when they get to 26.
Yeah.
And if that's the case, is this Osiris Torrance, who for what it's worth, as they're starting to schedule some of these 30s, which have not come out yet, even though I don't have the list of who it is, I know he has not gotten one yet.
Yeah.
So Torrance is not somebody they've chosen to visit yet. But Osiris Torrance, could they think John Michael Schmitz could play guard? I think they do believe he could play guard or center.
Right.
Out of Minnesota. TCU Pro Day is coming up here in a couple days. Steve Avila, a guy that they, I think, believe in a lot and think is a really good football player. Is this heading towards a potential where, hey, the target's got to be left guard at 26, or you maybe need to trade back and pick a left guard?
I think that, to me, I kind of feel like that they're going to let this board come to them. I do.
Yeah.
And if you mention a Steve Avila, and when you start to talk about Torrance and Avila, basically the same height, weight. If I
think Avila's a little more athletic.
But no, same height, weight.
Yeah. A little more.
But Avila more athletic, clearly more athletic.
Avila moves better. Torrance has more.
Clearly more. Yeah, clearly. I mean, this guy Avila is. He gets plenty of opportunities as a pass blocker, plenty of opportunities to play and he's good at it. I mean, he doesn't give any ground. He's powerful. You get some push with this guy playing that, and that in the running game too. But I think that he's going to have to play in a scheme, and like him and Torrance, where it's a little bit more about power than it is about, because there's times when Avila extends and you lose that separation. I mean, you lose that, separation happens. So I think Avila is damn good. I really, really do.
Would you be okay if he's the guy at 26, or would that feel like a reach to you?
I don't feel like it would be a reach. But I mean, I think Bradford from LSU. I know people are always on me like, oh, bro, you love all the LSU guys. But Anthony Bradford's a guy that if you want to move back in a draft, I think Anthony Bradford would be a guy that you might want to consider there going back, because again, another guy at 6'4", 332 pounds, strength, power, movement. Yeah. There's probably, I think the list of guards is better at the top than it is towards the middle or at the bottom.
Yeah, this does not stretch. The guard group does not stretch. Now, here's the thing. I think a lot of people feel like there's not a chance you get to 26 and the best player left on the board is Steve Avila. I think a lot of people feel that. But let's say they like Avila, they target him, and they say, this is our guy right here. Would it make some sense maybe? You look at it and go, you call Kansas City and say, hey, Kansas City back there at 31. You guys want to come up here, get a pass catcher, not risk losing somebody? Just swap with us. We'll take whatever it is, a fourth rounder, whatever, move back a little. And then at 31, that way you're ensuring the fifth-year option on the guy, but you're also going back as far as you can on the first-round slot money. You're picking up some extra capital and picking Avila maybe a little closer to where you actually have him on your board. Or would you say you're getting too cute? If Avila's the guy you want, just pick him at 26.
Don't get cute. Just draft if the guy's there. If you have several of those guards, Torrance, Avila, Bradford. I mean, if you had them ranked, if I had them ranked how I would, John Michael Schmitz from Minnesota would be my top guy.
Would you feel like you're wasting his ability though?
I'm going to play
him at guard.
I'm going to play him at guard, but I know that I have the flexibility if it gets too expensive for me at center with Biotish. I mean, Biotish is coming up, and people are probably evaluating Biotish and going, heck, this is a pretty solid. Heck, the Dolphins took a guy that you had as a starter at left guard and made him a center.
Yeah.
And was just fine with that.
Did you grade him at center?
It's so funny. David Hellman and I went on this tour.
Yeah.
We went on this tour during Connor Williams' first year that he was drafted.
2018.
And we went on this tour, and I'll never forget, we went to Texas A&M, and then we went to Austin to look at and I remember the New Orleans Saints worked him out as a center. They worked him out as a tackle, a guard, and a center. And I remember looking at Hellman and going, why does he look better at center? Kind of a thing. And Hellman goes, man, maybe they got something figured out here. But that's kind of where I think the same thing with John Michael Schmitz. I think the same thing with him. I think you could, if you don't want to pay your center, You play him at guard, but you have the flexibility if something happens to Biotish, you can plug him in at center, and then maybe it's Edoga or somebody like that playing the guard.
You're listening to the Love of the Star podcast. The Love of the Star is an Audacy podcast. You can find it on the Audacy app or wherever you get your podcasts. All right, Brian, it is now time for our Dean Julia Love of the Star mailbag. Got a few questions here. We had so many.
I really enjoyed, by the way, all the questions. Maybe do that show again.
I did too. Yeah, that was fun.
I mean, and if you guys keep firing the questions in, if we request some Bobby, our requests, send them in, and hopefully we'll put together. I love shows like that where you sit there and answer the questions.
We might this might take up a big chunk of the discussion here in the Dean Julia Love the Star mailbag because it's a broad question here.
Not about the
Robert.
running back and defensive.
No. Temperature check for 26. Usually Brian is hearing where it's headed for them at this point. So Brian, let's say if you were to try and narrow it down to like 2 or 3 names that you think are the likeliest and obviously they still have their meetings coming up. They have not had their meetings yet. They're going through their visits. I think when we're about 2 weeks out, you really start to hear guys that are like, oh, okay, they're starting to really like this guy. But as it stands now, maybe filling in some gaps and just trying to pair needs with how you think they view players typically. Who are just like 2 or 3 names you think will be are likely to be in play for them at 26 as, hey, this has a real shot of being the guy?
I think Johnston, the wide receiver from TCU's got a possibility to be there. I feel like that we'll see what happens with Robinson at running back.
Yeah.
We'll see if in fact that happens. I don't particularly think all the corners are going to be off the board for you right there. But I think it'll be very, very, very close. I think you'll have an opportunity. I think Mayer will be the first tight end off the board. So Kincaid and Musgrave will be in play there, I think. We mentioned John Michael Smits would be in play there. I think all the guards, it'll be Torrance, Avila, our kid from North Dakota State. Malk might be a guy that gets in is considered in play there. So I think it's going to be really open. I do believe all the corners are going to be gone. I think that you're going to have to figure out, I think it's going to come down to like, do you want a Cam Smith would be a possibility there. If you're maybe Ringo, I know that we're not as high on Ringo as others, but and who knows about them, but I think it's going to be close on Forbes, Cam Smith. If you're talking about corners, those defensive linemen, Breesy, Cansey, Mozzie Smith. I know I'm saying a lot of names, but that's kind of how.
Sure.
But that's how you got to look at it. I mean,
if I said Brian, though, you're setting the odds. You're not just who could be there. If I said Brian, you're going to set the odds for Vegas. Give me the top 3 names that just right now your gut you think will be the pick at 26.
I think it'll be Kincaid, Avila, and Cam Smith.
Very good names. Cam Smith, the corner from South Carolina. Kincaid, the tight end from Utah. Steve Avila, the guard there from TCU. I know you watched this guy this week.
What did you think? You have 3 names?
Yeah, I was gonna come around to. I think Kincaid's a great name. I think Avila's a great name. The third.
Man. I don't know with Banks. I like Banks more, and I don't know if Banks is going to be gone, but I don't know if they're going to like Banks as much as I am. That's why I picked. And I think Forbes might be gone.
I think Forbes is going to be a tough evaluation for them
because they're 106.
That's going to be hard for everybody.
That's why I picked Cam Smith. You're thinking about Branch
right now? No, Avila, Kincaid, and the third name, if I got to throw it out right now, is Musgrave, the tight end from Oregon State.
So you're saying two tight
ends and a guard.
2 tight ends and a guard.
That's just my.
We did a mock draft the other day on DallasCowboys.com on the draft show, and our defensive side of the ball was kind of wiped out. I mean, as far as first round guys.
Yeah, I think that happens. Now, here's the name I want to throw out to you, because he was right last year before anybody else, and that's Adetomiwa Adebawore.
It's about Mel Kiper's guy, huh?
The defensive lineman from Northwestern who played some edge, but maybe. I know you feel like is more of a 3 technique guy.
I kind of feel that way. Yeah.
Is there any chance you think that, because I mean, if you would have asked us the same time last year, I don't think anybody thought Tyler Smith was in the first round, right?
Right.
Like not just for Dallas. I think a lot of us thought he was like a second, third round player.
Yeah.
Maybe a similar situation here with Adebawore.
He's got an explosive burst off the ball, and I think he could be really disruptive. I mean, he's got some power to him. And, when you see how he gets into blockers, he can get rid of them. I mean, he gets across tackles. There's a lot of things to like about him. I mean, I don't know if he's the best pass rusher, and that's why I think he goes from end to tackle. I don't see that elite edge type of, he gets too caught up playing the block rather than, at times on that pass rush. So I feel like inside that he might have a little bit better chance. But yeah, absolutely. The fact that Mel Kiper had Tyler Smith mocked to the Cowboys, yes.
Makes you take a look.
Makes you take an absolute look at that. But I don't know. It's 6'2", 282. I mean, he's a disruptive football player, man.
It's funny. I had a Tolo, which is what we call our listeners there at 105 through the Fan. I had a Tolo tweet at me 2-3 days before the mock draft. And they said, just remember I tweeted this at you. Adebawore is who the Cowboys are going to pick. And he's going to be this year's Tyler Smith. And this was the comparison they made. And after I had heard some chatter, I went and watched Adebawore. And I thought the comparison that was tweeted at me was interesting. And I'm curious if you see it all. Do you see any Michael Bennett to his game?
Yes.
Which I thought was a very interesting comp. And so it was interesting. The fact that I got that tweet where I did, and it was one of those egg profiles, and I was like, boy, you've got a pretty good eye for an egg, because I don't know that I would have thought of that. And after I watched it, I went, there is some Michael Bennett to that game.
He or she's not wrong.
Yeah. And so I don't know. Maybe that's a low key
something to keep an eye on. Like I say, we'll see. You start figuring out the 30 visits,
which we'll get.
And now they've drafted some players that haven't been on 30 visits.
Tyler Smith was one.
Tyler Smith was one. Absolutely.
But they knew what they thought of him, and they wanted to keep that.
I'll be interested to see if Adebawore is this guy. I'll be interested.
Question from Travis. What is your favorite running back scenario if you can't draft Bijan at 26? Trade up early second or back maybe for Jahmyr Gibbs.
I don't know if it's questionable.
Well, he's got some options for you here.
Okay. So
go back into the early second for Gibbs. Stay in the second for Charbonnet or A-Chain.
Yeah.
Or third round, Roschon Johnson or Tyjae Spears. Day 3, Kendre Miller or Tank Bigsby. So which of those sounds the most appealing to you?
I would probably sit and hope for Gibbs. But if I can't get Gibbs, I would then go in this order: A-Chain, Charbonnet, and those are my second round guys. McIntosh, Evans.
Where do you have Roschon Johnson and Tyjae Spears?
I have Roschon Johnson in the third, and I have Spears in the fourth.
Kendre Miller and Tank Bigsby. Where do you have those guys?
Fourth.
Both of them?
Spears, Bigsby, Gray from Oklahoma, and then Kendre Miller from TCU in the fourth round.
Well, I think they like Kendre Miller. And I actually think these are all pretty solid names. So Roschon Johnson's on there, guy they had a formal with at the combine.
Yep.
Kendre Miller's there, a guy that they plan on working out ahead of his pro day, getting a private workout in. Tyjae Spears, another one which I don't know if we've said this yet, but they've had a private workout with Spears. They were at his pro day. They like Bigsby. I think Bigsby was a guy who had a private workout. A-Chain, a guy who had a formal at the combine. So when you look at all these different names here, I think Travis has all these guys about in the range that we'd be looking at. Charbonnet or A-Chain in the second.
Right, I think they're right. Yeah,
Roschon Johnson.
Yep.
So out of all those, your preference would probably be A-Chain in the second.
A-Chain in the second would be my preference.
So that would be the best one. Is there? I think the Cowboys might think. I think there's a shot Kendre Miller could be a day 2 graded player for them.
Sure.
Back day 2.
Sure.
So if they could get him day 3, I think they'd be really excited about that. But you think that's about where they should be then? Miller and Bigsby on day 3 and different guys like that. All right. Next question here from Tex Mayo. How do they not go offensive line in the first round unless it's Bijan or a top corner wide receiver that falls? So given the needs that they have right now, Brian, is it, I guess this is, I'm going to reword the question for me. Is it negligence if they draft something other than an offensive lineman, unless it's Bijan or a slider?
Yeah, if the plan is if Tyron Smith is your swing tackle, they need a left guard. Because I'm playing Tyler Smith at left tackle, and then that would be where I'm going to take the guard. I'm going to take.
So would it be negligent even if you have higher graded players there? Would it be negligent not to take the guard there if you feel there is a drop after that?
Man, that's a good question, because the way at 26, I always feel like in the first round, if you take the best player, it sets up the rest of the draft for you. You're not chasing stuff.
Yeah.
So if they've got higher rated players, like I was saying, the guard room does not go very deep. I think the quality of the guard is not very deep there.
No.
So they might look at it like they did, and they did it with Taco. Remember, they were thinking about, they're thinking about, hey, there's not a lot of defensive ends, not a lot of edges going back.
To be fair, and it worked out for him, and it was later in the draft. I think they did that with Jake Ferguson last year.
Yeah.
I don't think they necessarily thought that's where. I think they liked other players, but I think they looked at the board and went, "We're going to lose out on all the tight ends if we don't take one right here."
Yep.
And so that's how they looked at it. Question here from Lucas Chapman. Question about Israel Mukuamu. What is his role now that the starting three corners and safeties are set? I think he can be a hell of a player, but how will they use him with all the depth? Brian, I don't know about you. I think we talked about this in camp a little bit. Everything I've seen since Mukuamu got here, even though he's been a safety primarily, he's a better corner to me.
Better corner.
And I mean, I think he is a better player at corner than Kelvin Joseph is.
I'd agree with that.
And
Kelvin Joseph right now just not playing with a lot of confidence. Playing with confidence on special teams that he can do those jobs, but he's just it's lack of experience for him. Every time that you want to like him and put him out there and stuff, something happens. For early in his career, he always got hurt. And then now it's like you put him out there and he's closing on the ball, guy catches it. You're going, damn, bro.
Yeah.
You make that play, They threw everybody. They threw guys off the street out there playing corner at the end of the season.
Xavier Rhodes was brought in here. They tried for Trayvon Mullen. Yeah.
I mean, they tried.
You shouldn't have to do that.
Shouldn't have to. Not with a second round pick
Kelvin Joseph should be embarrassed. He should be embarrassed at his level of play that they went out and did that.
Maybe it's not his fault. Maybe it's people that drafted him.
Sure, but I'm saying in terms of we know he's got the ability to play it.
Sure,
he's got the ability that you shouldn't have to go get Trayvon. So that is on Kelvin Joseph.
He hasn't played a lot. That's the problem.
Some of it his own doing.
His career. He had not played a lot of games. He just didn't,
because he tried to sit him out at Kentucky.
Yeah.
He's just very frustrated. But back to Mukuamu, I think Mukuamu's future with this team should be at corner. I think he should be full time there. Knowing the way the Cowboys tend to operate, I would guess they instead have him as just some chess piece that, we can move him around and use. I would imagine he plays some safety, plays some corner, does some stuff. Right. But I think what we've seen on tape is better corner by far than he is a safety.
Right. So I agree.
That does it for us here today on the Love of the Star. Thank you for all your questions. Thank you for hanging out with us. We'll be back with you guys with a couple more episodes this week. Until next time, we will talk to you later.